What's going on, guys? Welcome to today's video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please consider subscribing. In today's video, I'm going to go over my 2019 BRZ, how to remove majority, if not all, of the silver trim pieces if you want to repaint them or vinyl wrap them or whatever you want to do. I went ahead and chose to paint. Later on down the road, that would actually probably be a really good opportunity to kind of take my time and learn how to wrap small things, because I'd never done that before, so that'd be a cool experience. But for now, I went with paint just because I like the way that paint looks and feels. I know vinyl has come a long way, but hey, I'm old school. That's what I like. So I'm going to go ahead and go over some of the tips and show you some of the parts, so that way it'll better help you if you maybe have questions on how to remove some of these pieces, or maybe you don't know how to do it at all and you want to learn. So some of these pieces I already have out of the car, like the steering wheel trim, the kick pads and the door speaker grill insert, because I wanted that black as well, the door handles, and I already did the interior, like the shifter boot around, well, not the boot, but the trim around it, the knee pads, kick pads, and then I even did my little traction control thing. Even though some people don't like to do that, I went ahead and did it anyways, because later on I'll just buy the parts, but for now I wanted to see how it looked. Alright, so go ahead and let's begin. So for the speaker and the door handles, you have to remove the door card. Now, I didn't remove it completely. What I did was I pulled it out after unscrewing the pieces, which I'll show you where. Pulled it out, and it's kind of like, you know, hanging, and I just lifted it up, but then I didn't really disconnect anything. I just kind of like used my knee to support it hanging, and I was able to remove these no problem. So it's up to you on what you want to do. Removing it completely obviously would probably be more appropriate, but for the sake of just me doing it, and I was able to get to it without feeling like I was going to damage anything additionally, that was fine for me. So here are the door handles, painted them black. Now, how to disassemble them, it's both going to be the same. There's going to be two cables connecting to your car. One for the lock and then the door. For the lock, you have to put it in the lock setting, and then it'll expose the insert for the cable so that you're able to remove it. And you simply just pull it away, and then right here is a lock. You just pull that out and it just pressure fit, so you'll hear it click and then it's out. Same thing for the other side, and it's the same premise. So now, in order to remove the handle itself, there is a pin holding this in. And what you have to do is you have to attack it from the bottom, because the top has some knurling around it to help keep it in place, so you can't actually go down any further. You need to go up. So just turn it upside down. If you have a punch pin, use that. Otherwise, what I used, since I didn't have one available to me, I couldn't find mine, was I just used an Allen key that was smaller than this pin, and I put it in place, and then I just whacked it a few times with a hammer, and it came right out. And that's when I was able to see that it had like the knurling on the top, so I'm glad I didn't go the other way. So that was a good coincidence, luck of the draw. But then once you do that, all you need to do is, with two hands, one hand you're gonna give the handle some play, like moving it back and forth. There's a spring here. Once you remove that pin, obviously this is sitting in there with pressure, the spring, but in order for that not to fly out and hit your face, or, you know, hurt someone, damage something that you have in the house by flying across the room, just hold it with your other hand, cup it, and then while you're moving this around, jigging it, it should just pop out. You feel it hit your hand. It doesn't hurt, but just don't be surprised and startled, and then you're all set. And then you just kind of do that, you know, reverse to reinstall it. If I can do it, you can do it, guys, but it's the same for both. Okay, so now for the speaker grill, the ring. Same thing. Once you get the door card out, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 5 screws, and that'll hold it into the door. So you remove those, and then you're able to take the actual kick pad out. Now, there's also screws that are holding the insert in. I removed those first, thinking that I would be able to pull this out, but you have to remove this pad. Something was catching it around the bottom, I'd want to say, and it just wasn't allowing the speaker grill. Like, you could pull it, but you don't want to bend it too much because it's plastic. You don't want to break the tabs. I was pulling it, but it just wouldn't come out. So I removed this kick pad, and immediately once I removed this kick pad, the speaker insert kind of just wanted to fall out. So do that and you'll be able to get that free. Remove the 4 screws that are all around it. They're Phillips. And then once you do that, you'll see these tabs, 4 of them all around the speaker. And what you do is you just pull away like that, and each one and pull up. So pull away, pull up, and it'll unlock it, and you just unclip it, and then it'll come apart, and the ring will come apart from the actual mesh, and then you're free to paint it. And then just reverse that for reassembly. Pretty easy to do. Again, if I can do it, you guys can do it definitely. And then here we are, the steering wheel trim. This one by far wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I watched a YouTube video on, like, I think this guy had a 2017 Plus with the media controls, and he did a darn good job of explaining it. But the only tip that I can give you, and I'll show you in the car, is don't disconnect your battery right away. All right, like, just carefully, you know, keep it on. But what you're going to do is you're going to attack those pins that are holding it in place. There's 3, one on the left, bottom, and right. I did the left and bottom first, and then for the right, you know, with that angle with the shifter there, cruise control stalk there, you know, there's no getting around the cruise control stalk. That's just there, you know. But the shifter, it was just, you couldn't get an angle, and I couldn't see, and I didn't want to blindly stab my, you know, screwdriver in there trying to find it. So what I did was, with the power on, because I had the battery originally disconnected, so I wasn't able to really move the steering wheel. So I plugged it back in, and then I was able to rotate with my car on, rotate the steering wheel so the right side was exactly placed where the left side was. And then that was super easy. Then I just looked over to the right and up, and then I could physically see the pin that he's talking about, and you just pull it. So it was way easier that way. So that would be my tip for removing the airbag. So once I got the airbag removed, it was loose, free to come out. Then I went ahead, powered down the car, disconnected the battery, waited a few minutes, made sure that there was no juice going through, and then I removed the airbag. I don't know if that's needed or not, but I did just in case, because, you know, I didn't want the consequence of the airbag exploding in my face. So, but anyways, here we go. So this is it. Now, there are quite a few plugs, 2 and a 3rd. So here we have the grounding unit, and it has a little tab there, so when it actually is still hooked up, you'll see this little metal tab. You just push it up with a screwdriver, flathead, very gently, and then you're able to release and slide it out. Very simple. I don't know if maybe other people didn't have that, because the video I saw, the guy just pulled it out, didn't have to actuate any tab or anything. That was weird. So good for him. And then you have this part, this plug that goes at the top. And then this plug is for the cruise control stalk, which I've seen some people remove the cruise control with it. I chose not to. There was no point. I just left it there and unplugged it, and I'll replug it back in. And again, I'm going to show you guys all of this, what I'm talking about. So you go ahead then, and once you get this unplugged and removed, you flip it over. And you got to be careful, because this is all one piece of plastic. So when you're removing it, once you have the screws undone and the plugs removed, you need to kind of like pull but wiggle, because it's held in by these plastic pins, and they're kind of stubborn. Like, I had to wiggle it around a bunch, but I was being super cautious, you know, because I didn't want to rip one out and then just snap the plastic in half. So, you know, word of caution there. But anyways, once you get that removed, you have the electronics here, and it's just simply push the tab in and then pull out to remove it. Same on both sides. And then both sides also have 2 Phillips screws. 1, 2, 1, 2. So I removed this first and just unplugged it and then tucked it over, because there's a zip tie here. I found no need to cut it. All you need to do is just pull it over and it'll hold itself in place. And then you're able to attack this screw here to be able to remove it. Well, more space. Maybe you can get it if you have a super small screwdriver. But that's what I did. And then I removed this. And then you do the same for both sides. And how you remove the actual unit, the module here, the controls, is each side, same exact spots. There's a bunch of tabs all around it, but don't be concerned with those. There's only 2 that you need to concern yourself with. See, here's the screw, here's the tab. Now, I don't know if my camera can actually see that because of the light, so I apologize, but rest assured, there's a tab here. You just push it away. And then same for the other side. It's right here, and you push it away. Now you can use a flathead screwdriver, or to be honest with you, they protrude enough to where I was able to get my finger in there and just use my fingernail. You want to gently do it, guys, because the plastic is super duper thin, so you don't want to snap it off. But once you remove one, like you pull on it a little bit, and then with two hands, obviously, you're able to kind of like pull the side away. And then same thing with the other side, pull the side away. There are two tracks here, and it's just locked in with these clips, and then you put the screws down. So once you remove the screws, plug, you just release those and you pull away, and they'll slide right out of the track. And it's the same for the other side, and that's how you remove the controls from it. Now, I already did the rest of my car, like the shifter trim, knee pad, like by the kick for your knees, and that was probably the most difficult, were the knee pad ones. And I'll go ahead and I'll show you, or at least tell you what I did. I'm not going to show, I don't want to retake it apart. But I'll give you some tips that were definitely super helpful, because I watched a bunch of videos on YouTube as well for that. And some people said, oh, you don't need to, you know, remove anything additional, like the little cubby where you can't hold anything. So it's just a little slot. And next to the push button start, like they said, you don't have to remove that. For me, I definitely had to remove that, and I recommend you just going through the process of doing that. It makes it a lot easier, because I felt uneasy with, like, I was really bending the plastic, and I felt like that was going to break. Like, so don't do that. Don't break it. But anyways, let's go ahead and get to the car, and I'll show you the next steps of like what I was going through that can hopefully help you guys out. All right. I do have the media controls for the steering wheel, so keep that in mind. But this is going to be a quick overview and tips of like how I went removing these pieces. So bear with me here if there's anything that I missed, a particular detail, or you find yourself having some difficulty with a particular part. Just leave a comment below and let me know, and I'll try my best to get back to you as soon as possible. But let's go ahead and begin. So I got my car pretty much disassembled quite a bit. I've already got some pieces done. So I got this blacked out. These were the hardest part, to be honest, just because there was a lot of disassembly. I wouldn't say it was hard, it was just tedious, but it was definitely worth it to disassemble completely instead of, there's quite a few videos out there. And for the fact that it worked for them is awesome, but for me, I had to remove this little piece here, the cubby, USB, and the push start, this cubby, all in one, in order to get these out. And I'll go ahead and I'll explain why in a moment, but let's go ahead and start with what's right in front of me, the steering wheel. Alright, so for the steering wheel, to start, you have two covers. There's going to be a plastic cover here by the cruise control stalk, and then one right on the opposing side, right here. And those are very simple to do. I just used a trim removal tool, which I recommend if you don't have them, pick some up. I went to Harbor Freight, like $8 for like 4 or 5 of these, which was a really good deal. But I do recommend it. Otherwise, you can use a flathead. Flathead is more prone to marring and scratching your plastic. Now, these trim removal tools are still very rigid, so they can still damage the plastic. Usually just because of the amount of pressure that you put on a piece. The pressure on the opposite side can usually leave a depression, so just be careful. Like, see here on the door, I got some scratches here. But they're on the inside, you can't see them, so it's not a big deal. But I'll go over some helpful tips on how to get this done. But essentially, this will black out a majority of your car, if not all of it, I think. But okay, so let's refocus. So once you got those covers off, there are these pins here you're going to see. 1, 2, and 3. And you have to push those in order for the airbag to release. Now, at first I started with having the car battery disconnected. I got these, the left side and the bottom, done very quickly. But then the right side, where the cruise control stalk is, had difficulty. And I watched the video. It was very, very helpful. It showed me the location of these, but I couldn't understand the depth. I wasn't able to get to it, and I didn't want to constantly fish a flathead screwdriver in there and blindly not be able to see what I'm doing, you know? So what I found was very helpful was for the cruise control side. So I would say release the left and the bottom first. You can actually visibly see them when you look into them. So get those removed first, and all you do is you just push it in, and it'll move the bar, release the airbag. Now for the cruise control side, what I did was I replugged in the car battery, turned the car on, and then I just turned the wheel So where the right side was exactly where the left side was. And then from over here, I was able to see down and up. So I just kneeled down, kind of looked up, and then I actually could physically see the pin. And I was able to very simply push it in and resolve the issue right away. So that would be my tip for you guys. Once you do that and release it, then I went ahead and disconnected the battery again, waited a few minutes, came back, made sure that everything was not drawing any power, wasn't able to be turned on or anything. You know, no reserve power in there. So, and that worked out really well. So that would be my tip for you guys, is do that part last and just turn the wheel and then redisconnect. So that's what I did. Now, I don't know if you really need to disconnect the battery, but I wanted to be cautious. It's an airbag. You don't want to do something which causes it to blow up in your face. Once you get the airbag pins out, which I'll show you here. So these are the pins that you're releasing. You'll have these two here in the center that are left. And it's really easy. You just take the plastic. It's like this. You just use a screwdriver, pry this tab up. And then same with the other one, the black one. Pry it up. And then you should be able to just wiggle it free. Or worst case scenario, take a screwdriver and just use it as leverage, mount it kind of underneath this body, and then just kind of like start pulling up, and it'll come undone. Relatively easy, so not too much to worry about there. And then for the actual trim itself, once you get that removed, there will be screws. Let me show you real quick with this. See, this is how it'll sit. There's one screw right here, one right here, and that's it. And then these harnesses, so they got this plug here that goes in the center, and it's a push tab, so you just push the tab in, pull it out. And then this one here at the bottom, that goes to the cruise control stalk. Some people will unscrew it and remove the whole module. I didn't see a point. I'm just going to replug it back in here. So that was the easiest for me. And then there was a ground, which you can see right here. It's this ground tab. And there's a little tab on it, so I had to pull it up a little bit with a screwdriver, and then it just came right undone. Some other people didn't seem to run into that issue, but I did, so that's what I did to remove it. Really easy. And then you can go ahead and reinstall it when you're done, which I'm going to do now, so I'll be back in just a moment. Alright, so we got everything plugged back in, so don't forget these two plugs here. Push them in and then push the tabs down. They'll click and lock into place. Do not forget your ground. That's easy to overlook. It's so small. Put your ground back in. Media controls right up here, along with the cruise control down at the bottom. Let me lift this to show you. Right there. Plug that back in. And then don't forget you got the screw on the left side and the right side here. And that's it. And with the battery remaining disconnected, you can go ahead and you can, oh actually I think there's some tucking clips here. Yep, actually, let me push that back up. So I just lift it up and it'll fall right into place. With the battery disconnected, re-plug in and push down on the steering wheel console, and this should lock right back into place. Yep, and just distribute the pressure. Locks back into place, and then you're not blowing your horn in your driveway, upsetting anyone that's around you. And then reassembled, and it looks pretty good. I like it way more than the silver, so really cool. But that's how you do the steering wheel. Not too bad, not too bad. So let's go ahead and show you the next pieces that I have. I'll go over all the center stuff like dead last, because I actually want to get these reinstalled because I need to go somewhere today, and I was lucky enough that Leanne, my beautiful babe, was allowing me to borrow her car to go grocery shopping and stuff like that. But alright, cool, so let's go back. So the door card, what you're going to want to do, and that's how I removed the kick pad here and the handle. There's a little push clip here, little black one. You just pry that out. Again, a trim removal tool piece comes in handy for that portion and going around the door. So you remove this tab here. There's a screw right here under a tab of your door handle that would be in place. And then you have to remove this trim piece here, and there are two screws. So 1, 2. So 3 screws in total and 1 push clip or locking clip, whatever you want to call it. Alright, so for this portion here, I actually have that painted already. Looks like this. what you want to do is, if it were in place like this, you just start right here at the bottom and kind of in this edge where you can't see. Now you don't have to use the tool too deep in there because this plastic piece is right here and set, so you can't really remove this. So you don't want to catch that and try to keep pulling and nothing happens. So just lightly put it in there, pull back and pry, and you should see this kind of lift a little bit. That'll give you leverage to find the correct spot to push your tool in, and it should pop out like that. Once you do that, some people just pull up with all their force. You can start that way. I would use a little caution. Pull a little bit, and then when it starts to catch and it doesn't want to release, it kind of gets a little hesitant. Then just start left and right while pulling up, because these are rubber and they'll kind of move a little bit and help the clips come out without breaking anything. But that's how you do that. And then I'll expose the screws that you need. Alright, so once you get that part inside the door here on the plastic trim, so just start right here, put your fingers, touch the metal of the door, run it down the plastic, and you'll feel grooves here. That'll be a groove spot where you can start to pry. So pull. It takes a lot of force. Pull. If you don't got it, I recommend using gloves or a rag. That'll help grip without hurting your fingers as bad. Pull, and then these should come out, these little plastic rivets, and they're very strong, so that's why you got to use a lot of force. So don't be fearful of breaking something. Do that. If you're still having difficulty, try to put your pry tool somewhere where it'll fit, and then use that to give yourself a little extra leverage while pulling. And the whole thing should break free. See? And then with that broken free, when I started, I actually just had it pulled out like this, and then I started trying to disconnect the speaker mesh, and that's when I found that it wasn't happening. I need to pull the whole leather piece out. So in turn, I went up to the top, and since this is all loose now, all you need to do is pull it out a little bit and then pull up. And this whole thing will shimmy out, and then it'll be held in by wires and everything like that. And in fact, I'll show you real quick. Let's see if I can get this with just your 2 hands. There we go. So I did the left side, jig that out first, and the rest followed. And as you can see, then you have access to the panel here, and you're able to remove the screws that hold in that speaker leather kick pad. And what I did there was I used my knee a little bit to help rest this, and then it just hangs. It can free hang, and just check all your wires to make sure you're not causing extra stress on them, and you should be okay. These wires right here should be the main ones holding, and they're very thick, and I'm not seeing enough stress to break any connection, so we're good. So I did that. A more proper way would be to actually remove the whole door card, but I didn't want to do that. In order to get the handle out, there's going to be 2 screws, 1, 2. So what you can do is, while unscrewing from here, just look through the window, and you'll be able to see what you need to take apart. Tools for everything entirely. A flathead screwdriver helps, trim tools, and then a Phillips. That's really all you need. And then I got a short stubby Phillips, which allowed me to get behind here and have room to unscrew everything. So I'm going to go ahead and re-put this back together. But that's how you get the door card off, and then you just have to look and find the screws that are all around here, which you can tell by the shape. And then if you're hesitant, just like pull a little bit, and you're going to feel where it doesn't want to release, and then just look around that area, because there's one screw that's kind of hidden. It's like underneath this module. I didn't want to remove it, but if you angle yourself right, you can actually feel it and see it. So it's not a big deal, and if you have that short Phillips screwdriver, you're able to get to it. But alright, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall this side, and then I'll be back with you guys in a moment. Alright, so I got that reinstalled. Speaker, door handle. Door handle, there's like a little plastic bracket. It's like right at the bottom here. And just 2 screws. So you just put it in place, it'll sit flush, and then you put these down. Then you reattach. The green is for the door, the white one is for the lock. And you'll actually have to move the lock to the lock position. And you can see. So that's how you'll be able to view it. So just play around with that. It's very easy to reassemble. And the speaker, same thing. You can see. I had 2 screws already installed for the speaker grill at the bottom. I actually had to undo them because they go through another little part where it makes contact and you put the screw through all of it. So just had to undo the two at the bottom. But once you start putting this back into place, you know, you'll have a good idea how it goes back together. So if you don't have very good memory, it's really not that big of a deal. Even everything is labeled, like the speaker insert says left hand, right hand, all that good stuff. So, but all right, so now all that there's left to do is I'm going to pull this back up, set it on top, pound it in, and then all the clips will be attached. I made sure that all those white clips are present. If they're not, check your door. They might be stuck in there, in which case you'll need to just use a trim removal tool or a screwdriver. Hopefully a trim removal tool. That's the best way not to damage the clip. You can see it's got like this lip here. When you need it to come out to show an example, it doesn't want to, of course. But it slides right in. See how it has that wiggle room, that movement? So if it's stuck to the door, there's a couple layers to it, but there'll be a top layer. You'll be able to put your tool in, pry it out, and then you'll be able to use that to slide it in. And then it'll be reset, so that way you can go ahead and remount it. Wish I would have saved that as an example, but I didn't think about it. But here we are. So all right, so I'm going to put this door back up, and this door is exactly the same as the other side. So very easy to do. So if you can get one, you can get the other. So I'm going to go ahead and get this rebuttoned up. I'm going to reassemble the passenger side, and then I'll go ahead and describe the center, and we should be able to wrap this video up. I apologize for it being so long, but I am very talkative when it comes to these things, trying to just make sure that in the end it's helpful. Some people don't like that and say that I'm a little chatty Cathy and it's too much. In real life I don't chat that much, but in the videos I do, just to try to help. So anyways, all right, I'll see you guys in a minute. Okay, so we got everything buttoned back up and put back together, and I like how everything looks. So obviously results may vary, especially if you paint. If you're a painter, you know, if you're really good at painting, it's going to look great. If you're mediocre, it's going to look mediocre. But only one way to improve: practice. So to me, it doesn't look bad at all. Again, you guys can vinyl wrap, or you can choose to paint, whatever you want to do. So pretty cool. All right, so let's go over the center, which is the last part, and hopefully this video helped you some. If not, then my apologies for watching such a long video. All right, so in the middle here, you pull this little pad up. You'll have two bolts, but they have Phillips on there, so you can just use a Phillips head screwdriver. Up to you on what you want to do. But you got to remove those. Once you remove those, this whole thing will come very loose. Like, you can pick it up from this side. You'll put your finger under here. You pull up on this boot for the e-brake, and this will just unclip. I believe the clips are like along where my fingers are. Okay, so you pull that up, and you can just pull it up and then push it out a little bit, and it'll get it out of the way so you don't have to worry about damaging that. Next part here is you'll want to put this out of gear and put it into neutral. So if you're parked, just make sure, pull up your e-brake so you don't go rolling around. Find it easier to remove your shift knob. Up to you on what you want to do. I had a Tomei knob on there, but since it's a winter time, I put the stock one back on because the leather doesn't stay as cold as long. But unscrew that, and then what you'll do is you'll put your fingers underneath the boot. Make sure you get a lot of extra grip, so you don't want to tear this. But you basically just pull up under the ridge of this plastic here in the front. Two hands, each opposing side. Pull up, and it'll come undone. And then you'll able to lift it completely over the reverse lockout and remove that. Very easy to do. Once that's exposed, you'll have two screws here holding in your traction control buttons, which I have painted. I believe the replacements that are black with the logos are a little bit pricey for what it is. So I don't know, maybe I'll just get some vinyl stickers made and put them over so it returns it to a stock look. Or who knows, maybe they'll go on sale for the buttons and I'll end up picking those up. I know this trim around the shift boot is on sale currently from the time I'm recording this video. I think it's like $17 on FT speed, so that's cool. So you'll find some parts are cheap, and some parts, I believe those like arm, what do you call them? I don't know, door handle trim pieces. Those are actually kind of expensive right now. I think the last time I checked they were like not under 70. I think it was like 100 something, but I don't know. I could be wrong. The prices seem to fluctuate, and it looks like Toyota dealers vary from dealership to dealership. So there that is. But all right, let's get back to focus. All right, so you got that removed. You remove the 2 screws here. Now, the next step would be to remove this. Very easy to do. You can just pry up with your fingers or just use the tool, makes it easier. But either way, this comes undone fairly easily. I pull from this corner here. I start here, work my way around. And then what you're left with here is this trim. Now, for mine, I got this glossy black plastic thing. It's very rigid. It's cold right now. So word of advice, another tip is if you can wait till it's warm, or if you're in a heated garage or something, that's better, because plastic pieces are going to get more brittle when it's cold, so more prone to breaking a tab. So just be cautious with that. I did it in the cold. I didn't have any issues, but again, you know, that's prone to happen. I had that issue with my bumper. I was working in the cold and one of the tabs broke, and I feel like it's because it was so cold and it was so brittle, but I do know that the front tabs just are terrible for this car. So either way, what's done is done. But you're going to want to start with this trim piece here. Now what I did was I tried to work with my hands here. There's tabs here, so you got to be careful. Don't pull using the tabs. Just kind of like get your hand in there or the tool. Wiggle it a little bit, get it loose. And then I started from over here. And then I was able to get it from this side. And then I started bottom to the top. And then it just came out. Now once you do that, there'll be 2 screws on each side. Phillips. Those are helping hold these kick pads in. And that's kind of the main goal of what we're getting to now. The kick pads. There'll be these 2 bottom plastic pieces. Very easy to remove. You just pull on them from one side and it'll just follow along down like a zipper. Same thing over here. So once you get those removed, some people, when they remove the passenger side, said they were able to get their hand up. Let me move this guy here. Yeah. Some people were able to put their hand underneath and disconnect this USB. My hands aren't huge, but there's no way I was able to do that. I could touch the wire, and that was about it. I couldn't get a grip on anything from pulling my hand up in there. So the next step is very carefully, very carefully, take your pry tool, and I started from right here, but underneath this plastic piece, so any damage that I would start with would be hidden. Luckily, there was no damage, but it felt a little weird. I started from here. I started prying because there's 2 tabs, top and bottom, that hold this in place. And I started from here, started pulling, and then once I got to here, where both top and bottom here were removed, I put my hand under, and I was able to touch the wire to the USB. I pushed on it a little bit with one hand, while the other hand I was using this tray to try to like pull, and then it came out. Now, at that point, I didn't have to disconnect anything. Now, that's up to you if you want to, but for me, I didn't have to. As long as I got this tray unlocked, I was able to pull it out enough and up to angle it. There are 2 screws holding the rest of this center plastic trim, at least in my model year, right there. So I needed to do that so that way when you lift this, you're able to go from the back, lift it up, pull it back, and then this part we're able to be released and move back more. Once you get that to move back more, you can then pull on these and remove the kick pads, because they got a huge tab here that kind of sticks like this, like my finger, and it locks it in place with this center console. At first, I watched some videos, they said you didn't have to remove this piece, you just pull and bend this, but there is no way. Like I would have to tear out those screws or something. Like the plastic would just have to break and collapse to get me to get that extreme angle. So my recommendation is that's how I found to do it proper. It was the best result. Once I did that, everything easily was able to be shifted back, and these pads came out no problem. So that's it for the center parts. The last part, or the vents, which are, in my opinion, the easiest. And you can kind of see how they go from like shallow here to deep. So just take your pry tool, put it here, and just kind of give it a little bit of pressure along the sides. Obviously, don't worry about damaging this, because that's not as big of a deal. You could indent this, the actual part of your dash, so just be very cautious. But if you just pry up and go little by little, eventually one point will want to shift. You just have to find it in your car, and once it shifts, it'll give you enough lip room to where you can actually just pull it and it'll remove very easily. And then you do the same for each side. And other than that, that was pretty easy to do. So the vents are very easy. Door cards, as long as you're familiar with removing them and the whole procedure that I went through, I didn't rank that to be difficult at all. Same thing with the door cover handles as well as the actual handles. Those were not bad at all. This was the most difficult, the kick pads. Everything else was pretty easy. This traction control, once you remove the screws, there's just like a plug. You can just unplug it, and then you can take it inside. And one part that I wish I would have filmed is you can actually take these buttons, once you have the module out, you can disconnect the module, the board, from these buttons, and it's all one cover. And then once you get that cover off, if you flip it upside down, inside will be tabs that will release the individual buttons. And that's how I painted this. So I removed the electronic board, which was just a couple of tabs on each side, just very carefully with a very tiny flathead screwdriver. I removed it, pulled out the sheathing, and then flipped it upside down, and I was able to release the tabs, and it let the buttons out. And that's how I painted it, so they move pretty freely, not gunked up in the middle. So I think that's why the finish actually didn't come out too bad. And what I did for every single piece, particularly the ones that have the most traffic, like the handles and then the center for the steering wheel, everything I hit with matte black paint, 2 to 3 coats minimum, and then also 2 to 3 coats of that matte clear for extra protection. Because if you decide to paint, the last thing you want to do is have everything done and then nick it, and then you damage it, and then you're like, oh man, now I gotta redo it. So save yourself the trouble. Make sure to throw on some type of clear coat. It really does help. And then my last tip is, I'm not the most patient guy on the planet, so if you decide to paint, and I'm sure it's the same as vinyl wrapping. For vinyl wrapping, you probably want to take your time, be meticulous when you're applying the vinyl wrap. But for paint, make sure you give it enough time to bond. Like, I think in the can it says for the rattle cans, most of them for Rust-Oleum are like dry in 20 minutes, ready to handle in an hour, fully cured in 24. And then if you're spraying on plastic, 5 to 7 days will give it, after that time, it'll adhere at its full strength and be set. Now, within an hour, depending on how many coats, that's very relevant. If you do a lot of coats, 1 hour isn't going to be enough. It'll look dry, but guys, it'll be kind of mushy. So just my advice, spray it a couple times, get your coats done, and then just wait till the next day and then start handling it. Otherwise, if you're like me, then I actually ended up having to sand, take extra time to get rid of fingerprinting, grooving, high points, just so much stuff. So, and it really depends too on how particular you guys want to be about it. If you're super picky, then that's my advice. Be super patient. If you're not that picky and you just want to get it done, sure, you can go quick, but then you might have to live with like high spots and stuff like that. But anyways, hope this video was helpful for you guys. I will catch you guys in the next video, and if I missed anything particular, please just let me know. I know this video is super duper long. My apologies, but there was a lot of parts, and I didn't want to skip over anything that I found to be a very, very helpful tip for you guys. So, all right, I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.